Samantha Markle, who joins me live from the US. Samantha, I have to say, this was one of the most nauseating...
Meghan Markle says she's 44. Her Northwestern classmates are in their 50s. The yearbook photos don't lie, but the biography does. Official archives list 1981, yet leaked records whisper 1977. And the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. She has spent years crafting an image of precision, from Hollywood ingenue to Duchess in royal silk. Every photo, every caption, every polished timeline has been arranged like a stage play. But buried beneath the glamour is a set of records that refuse to match the script. Yearbooks, alumni newsletters, even the ages of those who stood beside her in old campus photographs raise questions no palace PR team has ever fully silenced.
Full opinion. It's rather lofty to suggest the ability to align with, issues of war.
Sources say this isn't speculation whispered in anonymous forums. It's dates, names, and documents that sit in plain sight, daring anyone to line them up. And when you do, the math simply doesn't add up. The first thread is her birth year. On paper, Meghan Markle was born August 4th, 1981. That date sits in glossy profiles, royal archives, and official biographies. But reports suggest another timeline has been circulating for years: 1977, 1976, even 1975. Each version comes with its own alleged witness, a former classmate, an old event program, or leaked alumni listings. None of these sources are government certified, but the consistency of the claims has made them impossible to dismiss. Insiders claim some of Meghan's earliest critics didn't pull these numbers from thin air. They pulled them from the same public documents anyone could access, but few bothered to check. That's why the scandal lingers, because once you've seen the contradiction, it's impossible to unsee it.
Our fathers, so we have to include the men when we are self-glorifying. There's got to be some acknowledgement there.
For Meghan herself, silence has been the strategy. She has never directly addressed these rumors, never offered a firm denial, never confronted the specific names and dates that cast shadows over her official record. And yet, silence is its own kind of answer. Fans online argue that if there were nothing to hide, she could end the whispers with a single certificate, a single verified document. Instead, the discussion continues, fueled by the way her past seems to reemerge in curated fragments. Old photos surface exactly when her image is under strain. High school snapshots appear in press releases just as new lawsuits reopen family disputes. Each time, the evidence feels less like memory and more like management. And that's the hook. If one piece of her story has been polished, how much of it has been rewritten? Because here's the truth. The documents themselves may not tell the full story, but the edits do.
Some key clips from the podcast, and I'll get you to review as we go. So during the chat with Serena, she appeared to suggest that ambition...
The palace once altered her son's birth certificate weeks after it was filed, stripping her given names and replacing them with a royal title. Officials called it a bureaucratic adjustment. Insiders called it baffling. To critics, it was proof that even the most sacred records could be rewritten when convenient. And that's what makes Meghan's age scandal so potent. It isn't about a number. It's about whether the truth can be altered, delayed, or erased entirely, and what else may have been quietly adjusted before the world was watching. The moment you take Meghan's official timeline and hold it next to those alumni records, the internet lights up like dry tinder meeting a spark. On TikTok, creators freeze-frame the salsa club photo, circling her classmates' faces with age captions pulled straight from LinkedIn. On Reddit, users piece together a patchwork timeline: high school graduations in the late 1980s, college activities in the early 2000s, and a birthday that refuses to land in one place. YouTubers dive in too, producing hour-long breakdowns comparing her alleged 1977 birth year to her official 1981 narrative. Fans aren't just gossiping anymore. They're investigating, turning into amateur archivists, combing through scanned yearbooks and digitized alumni newsletters. What was once rumor has become a crowdsourced project, and every discovery spreads the fire further. For supporters, this scrutiny feels obsessive, even invasive. They argue that universities are full of non-traditional students, that age gaps are normal, that not every inconsistency is a conspiracy. But critics counter with receipts, saying the pattern is too consistent to be dismissed. Sources close to Northwestern alumni circles say Meghan's name appears repeatedly alongside older classmates in newsletters and activity rosters, not just as a one-off quirk, and that detail shifts the conversation from coincidence to credibility. Reports suggest some alumni themselves have been quietly asked about Meghan's time on campus, with answers that don't always match the official biography. Fans seize on these anecdotes as insider testimony, whether verified or not, and in the echo chamber of viral content, perception often matters more than proof. The royal institution hasn't helped matters. By refusing to comment, they've created a vacuum that online voices are more than happy to fill. When Samantha Markle revived her lawsuit in early 2025, tabloids noticed that chatter about Meghan's age spiked almost in parallel. Insiders claim this overlap isn't accidental. Controversies tend to drag old rumors back into the spotlight, especially when legal documents put family history under a microscope. And for Meghan, that means every time she's in the news for one issue, the age question tags along as an uninvited guest. Fans have started calling it the echo effect. One spark reignites a dozen old fires, each one feeding the next. And when the flames leap across platforms, from gossip blogs to mainstream headlines, they stop looking like whispers. They start looking like a storm. The irony is impossible to miss. Meghan and Harry built their public identity on truth-telling, positioning themselves as the victims of royal secrecy and misinformation. Yet now, critics say, the very tool they wielded has turned against them. Reports suggest even sympathetic journalists have grown cautious, worried that amplifying the Sussex narrative might drag them into a credibility trap. And as more ordinary fans notice the cracks, the conversation shifts from, is this true, to why is this hidden? That subtle pivot transforms curiosity into suspicion, and suspicion into viral momentum. In today's media landscape, that's all it takes to turn a rumor into a headline. The strongest fuel for any rumor isn't anonymous chatter, it's paperwork. And in Meghan Markle's case, the paper trail is messy. The most glaring example came in 2019 when her son, Archie's birth certificate was altered weeks after being filed. Her given names, Rachel Meghan, were deleted, replaced with Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Officials said it was a clerical update for consistency, but insiders told The Telegraph they had never seen such a change for any other royal mother. Reports suggest even palace staff were baffled. To critics, it wasn't about names at all. It was proof that official documents could be rewritten quietly without public explanation. And once you've seen one record changed, it's easier to believe others might not be what they appear. Then there's the yearbook evidence. Alumni archives from Northwestern University list Meghan in multiple activities alongside classmates now confirmed to be in their early 50s. On their own, those pages could be explained away. Mature students, late transfers, unusual circumstances, but insiders claim these weren't isolated cases. Meghan's name, they say, repeatedly appears in rosters with the same cluster of older students across salsa club, cultural groups, even event programs. That repetition raises questions. Was she truly a freshman surrounded by people nearly a decade older, or was she closer in age than the official record admits? Reports from gossip blogs frame these pages as receipts, screenshots circled and magnified, turning grainy scans into viral proof. Each repost tightens the knot of suspicion. The whispers don't stop there. Former acquaintances have fueled the fire with interviews that clash with Meghan's official timeline. One alleged classmate insists they graduated the same year, a date that would make Meghan 4 years older than claimed. Another remembers attending a high school reunion where her name was listed in the program, despite her supposed graduation being years later. None of these accounts are bulletproof, but their consistency keeps the rumor alive. Insiders say even Hollywood casting directors once traded jokes about Meghan shaving a few years off her resume, a common practice in an industry obsessed with youth, but one that looks very different when transplanted into the royal record. And then there are the leaks that surface like clockwork. Archived event programs, alumni newsletters, even casual mentions in entertainment magazines from the early 2000s sometimes list dates that don't align with the 1981 birth year. Each time they resurface, they're brushed off as errors, typos, or editorial mistakes. But critics argue the sheer volume of mistakes suggests something more deliberate. Reports suggest rival biographers have been digging into these discrepancies for years, quietly filing requests for access to California birth records that remain sealed to the public. And while no one has yet produced a smoking gun, the stack of contradictions has grown too tall to ignore. In the world of celebrity branding, perception is everything. And right now, the perception is that Meghan's past contains a chapter she doesn't want anyone to read. By the time the contradictions hit mainstream outlets, the narrative had already shifted. This wasn't just an internet rabbit hole anymore. It was a question too loud for even polished PR to ignore. In late-night panels, commentators openly debated Meghan Markle's real age with the same gravity usually reserved for box office flops or royal divorces. One tabloid headline screamed, "The Duchess who erased 4 years," while a viral YouTube breakdown titled "Meghan Markle's Missing Timeline" racked up millions of views in just days. The tone was no longer speculative. It was accusatory, and in a media ecosystem hungry for clicks, suspicion sells better than silence. Inside royal circles, silence remained the only official response. Buckingham Palace issued no clarifications, and Kensington insiders claimed the Windsors were determined not to dignify gossip. But privately, reports suggest aides were alarmed. The monarchy depends on image, and when cracks appear in one member's story, it threatens the credibility of the institution itself. Insiders told the Daily Mail that advisors feared fueling the rumor by commenting, but also worried that ignoring it could make the crown look complicit. It was a lose-lose dilemma. One source described it bluntly. If Meghan's numbers don't add up, people start asking what else doesn't. In a family where lineage defines legitimacy, even whispers of altered records feel like an earthquake. For Meghan herself, the fallout has been more personal. Critics point to her carefully staged media appearances as evidence of overmanagement, while fans insist the scrutiny proves nothing but the public's obsession with tearing her down. On social platforms, hashtags like MarkleMath and Royal Numbers Game trended for days, each meme sharper than the last. One viral TikTok stitched together clips of Meghan insisting on living her truth, overlaid with flashing graduation years that didn't match. The result wasn't just mockery, it was mistrust, delivered in 15-second bursts, repeatable millions of times. And once mistrust goes viral, reputations rarely recover cleanly. The larger cultural irony is impossible to ignore. Hollywood has long tolerated shaved ages, edited resumes, and carefully managed backstories. But when the same tricks appear in a royal narrative, they strike a nerve. Reports suggest industry insiders quietly admit Meghan may not be alone in age bending, but the stakes of monarchy make her case uniquely volatile. A fudged resume can be forgiven. A fudged royal biography carries the weight of history, legitimacy, and public trust. That's why the scandal hits harder than any studio PR disaster. This isn't just about Meghan Markle, the actress. It's about Meghan Markle, the Duchess, the mother of a royal heir, the woman whose personal story was once folded into the Crown's official archive. And if that archive has cracks, critics argue, the entire fairy tale begins to wobble. When the dust settles, one truth remains. This isn't just a rumor about numbers, it's a question about trust. Meghan Markle's age debate has outgrown the tabloid margins and entered the mainstream, forcing fans, critics, and even neutral observers to ask how much of a public figure's past is performance. Sources say Hollywood executives are privately uneasy, pointing out that if a duchess can allegedly trim or obscure her timeline, what does that say about the way celebrity branding works at large? In an industry where image is currency, every missing year feels like missing money, and nobody forgets who cashed in. For fans, the fallout has been polarizing. Supporters frame Meghan as the victim of a relentless witch hunt, another example of misogyny dressed as investigative journalism. They argue that no man in Hollywood has been scrutinized this way, and that Meghan's achievements, from acting roles to royal motherhood, shouldn't be overshadowed by birth dates. But her critics see it differently. Reports suggest skeptics are doubling down, claiming the silence from Meghan and the palace only deepens the suspicion. On Reddit threads and TikTok stitches, the conversation has already shifted from "is she older?" to "what else has been hidden?" That pivot transforms curiosity into distrust, and distrust into cultural permanence. Once the internet decides something doesn't add up, it rarely goes back to believing the official story. And here's the cultural sting. Every time Meghan tries to move forward, her past drags behind her like an anchor. Lawsuits reignite rumors. Carefully curated photos trigger fresh analysis. Even silence itself becomes a kind of evidence, proof to some that there's something left unsaid. Insiders claim rival royal biographers are circling, quietly preparing new chapters that will revisit the age question, whether Meghan responds or not. And in Hollywood, where youth and image sell, this isn't just gossip, it's precedent. If even a duchess can't escape the consequences of narrative management, then every actor, influencer, and public figure now knows the internet will eventually find the cracks. The Meghan Markle timeline isn't just about one woman. It's about the new rules of fame in an era where every photo is archived and every inconsistency is forever searchable. So where does this leave us? Maybe Meghan really was born in 1981. Maybe the contradictions are nothing but coincidences. Or maybe, just maybe, the missing years are the most carefully hidden chapter of her story. Either way, the scandal has achieved what every rumor dreams of: permanence. Because once millions of people start asking the same question, it stops being a whisper. It becomes history. If Meghan Markle's missing years can spark a storm from one old yearbook photo, imagine what happens when the next forgotten detail surfaces. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop a like if you've followed the breadcrumbs, and stay tuned. The next chapter could be closer than you think.